You and I are predetermined nonsense, and that's okay. You and I have predetermined consequence, and that's okay. And that's okay. You and I are locked into our destiny, and that's okay. And that's okay. You gotta know what you want. You gotta know what you want. You gotta know what you want. Look out. You gotta know what you want. Look out. You gotta know what you want. You gotta know what you want. You and I, friends telling nonsense. You gotta that's okay. You gotta know what you want. Look out. Predetermined nonsense have predetermined consequence. You and that's okay. You and friends telling nonsense. Look out, and that's okay. You gotta know what you want. You gotta know it. Destiny, and that's okay. And that's okay.
All tucked in, ready to sleep.
Closing sale, everything must go, nothing left behind, no wild oats to sow. So out of my way, I'm done now. You see, you took the meat, but not my bones. Now throw away your key. 1 foot out the door, persistent. You are frozen in time. Oh, I love you slips out of my mind. So sail, set sail, a little bird. Just go and set sail. Set sail, set sail, a little bird. just go and set sail. I'll take my ship away as the storm rolls in. I hope the wind is with me, and I hope you've learned that the pirate within me is sworn to the truth. Live or die by this rule. Something old and something new is the treasure within me. As sad as it seems, you will come to know what it all means to me. Set sail, little bird. Just go and set sail. Set sail, little bird. You just go now and set sail. Some pictures and some memories, ones I can't forget, on the crest of my black heart. You best not forget that the pirate never loses. He always collects one way or another. Now you can clear up all your regrets of the time you set sail with that pirate from the sky. You will remember him until that day that you die. Set sail, little bird. Now come on, just set sail. Set sail, little bird. Now I want you to set sail. Set sail, oh little bird. Now I want you to set sail. It's the same road as before, and I wonder who I'll see this time. Just to touch the water and swing through the trees. Home is at memory away. Take me Please take me home. Come on. Please take me home. Please take me
All right, dudes, we are live with another Pangburn Hangout.
School I was
Just
at
gonna
before
open
the
up
one
the
I
room.
was at now was absolutely soul destroying. Yeah, but I like my current school and principal are pretty great.
So, guys, we are live. Just want to interject for a second. It's Deniability Day, Saturday. I'm really looking forward to listening in on this topic, racial and xenophobic violence. What do you guys think out there? Is it on the rise, on the downfall? What do you guys think? I'll be mostly listening today, but Deniability, welcome back, brother.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah, racism and xenophobic violence. I'm not so sure it's on the rise. It's something that's difficult to measure because it's so like upfront in your face when it happens that it feels like it's everything, but it might just be a small minority, you know. But that being said, small minorities seem to be the ones that abuse in Africa. So yeah, I just find it a very interesting subject, and it's definitely something where the sort of iteration of it that you have in the West, what Western open functioning democratic capitalist societies have as definitions for xenophobic and racist violence. There seems to be a very significant difference between what that means in Asia, South America, and Africa, and what that means in a Western democracy. And I've always found it challenging trying to understand what racial violence and xenophobic violence is from an American perspective or a European perspective, because in large part it just seems to be people getting really overexcited about insults. And I contrast that with the sort of xenophobic and racial violence you see in Africa, where you will witness another human being put a tire around someone's head, douse them with petrol and set it on fire because he was from a different country or he was a different skin color. And even within the same skin color, like different shades of skin color. And you see that sort of racial violence and xenophobic violence in Africa, and then I see someone in America get on a soapbox say that they've been the victim of a hate crime because someone called them the N-word, and I go, this isn't matching up in my head. So I wanted to have a discussion about it and get some perspectives. So, Bobby, any thoughts on racism and
Well, generally, I agree with you. I mean, if you look at old photos in the United States of like lynching, you can get a taste of like what it was like, 100 years ago or 80 years ago. Uh, that is a far cry from what's happened in recent decades. So I might have mentioned this before, but the last lynching that occurred in the United States was actually 40 years ago yesterday, I think, 40 years ago. And the guy who did it was sentenced to death and executed in the electric chair. So and that was like in Alabama in the early 80s. So obviously we've made enormous strides. And so I think that people are very misguided about the trend with people who think that like the trend of racist hate crimes is like on the rise or racism is on the rise. It's like overall, it seems to be that we've really been on the right track the last 100 years or so.
I can agree with that. I think like freedom of speech and proper equal rights under law has done a huge part to equaling the playing field, as it were. But I worry that I see the current rhetoric around anti-racism stuff, as it were, in America, as it's rated in like Black Lives Matter and all these movements that seem to take it a step too far. They seem to me to be engaging in one of the core tenets I think that is fundamentally fascistic, and what's wrong with the right, and that's the belief that one can use government power to force people against their will to do anything, and um, as much as having a belief that there's one thing that you know of that if we just change that, it would fix all the problems in the world. Um, that I find very like troubling, and I see that in like the sort of rhetoric of the left today, where the sort of the forefront of their political ideology and what they're fighting for um, seems to be taking society in the wrong way. I think maybe we've overcorrected too far. Um, it's understandable, you know. We have this thing called Nazism, and it fucked the world up for a little bit there. And that was like way too far right, and I think people just like ran, sprinted towards the left, and like we should have played like a 10-kilometer race, and we're playing like a 50-kilometer race right now.
I know what you mean. I mean, like, I'm not going to blame somebody. I'm not going to blame somebody who's like raised in some minority kid that's like raised in poverty and didn't have a father and, you know, was subject to a shitty school system. Like, you just look around you and you see dilapidated houses and you see, you know, crumbling infrastructure and you have crappy schools and there's bullying in your schools. And you're going to think that there's a reason why it's this way. And it's very tempting to blame the historical racism around you for like your situation, you know. Um, and so it's hard to like if you're in that community, it's like really hard to see out of it and see like a bigger picture. You don't want to listen to a PowerPoint about how well the cycle has to be broken with you and you need to be a better parent than your parents were and blah blah blah.
I get that, and I think what the sort of the rights under law that have gotten America so far, the ones that respect liberty and freedom of the individual, um, those laws seem to have gotten you a tremendous way, and I find it problematic to even point out that there's a problem in America insofar as race, because what the fundamental rights that underpin liberty, what they're there to do is to make society flourish better over time, which means there's always going to be this constant improvement. And it's not something that was ever meant to go, okay, racism is illegal and then suddenly all racism stops, you know? Like
You can't
we
do
don't
it
work
that way.
like that.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's to say here's the line, and we're gonna keep punting this line, and as generations iterate out, more and more people will accept this idea that racism is incorrect, and it's been a tremendous success. Like it's at the point now where, regardless of where you land on the race issue, if someone calls you a racist in America, like, it's one of the deepest insults you can give someone, and they respond viciously to it. That to me is a fantastic indicator that the cultural war, insofar as racism goes, has been won. Like, people have an anti-racist perspective, and I worry about the current people that are trying to shape a narrative that America is this tremendously racist society, when the evidence seems to be that over time, since they've given liberty to all peoples equally, everyone's gotten freer and freer and freer, and it's gotten better and better and better over time. So I don't, yeah, and by creating this false narrative of a racist problem in America, they are seeking to pass rights and laws. So they've identified a social ill, and they have a desire to use governmental power to force people to abide by their solution. And that sounds a lot like, all that's wrong in the world is Jews, and if we just kill all the Jews, the world will be a better place. Sounds just like fucking the Nazis, and I got great issue with it.
Yeah, well, on that note, what I hate about the way America is going, I don't know. I think that this is actually the case in South Africa too. You have a big debate over this. Is the requirement to say what race you are all the time? Like, there are so many documents where you have to say what race you are. The second you're born, it has to be on the birth certificate. It has to be on your driver license. It has to be when you apply for any job, when you apply to any school, on the census. You answer any survey. You donate blood. You do anything. They have to know what race you are. And it's like, so that everything can be tracked from the moment you're born to the moment you die. They have to track who of what race went to what school and got what job and did this and that. And I think that this is the opposite of the way you solve the problem. You have to stop. What I'm trying to get people to do is refuse to answer that question. You say, mind your own damn business when somebody asks that, which is what I have been doing. So the last time I went to donate blood and they asked me what race I was, I said, I'm not telling you that. Or on the census, I wrote in, mind your own damn business on the race question.
Just say black, Eliyahu. Just say black.
I think in some cases, though, race is relevant, especially when it comes to medical issues such as blood. Like sickle cell is more prevalent in African American communities.
But the problem is, right, that yes, we've identified markers in genes and DNA that show particular weaknesses. The problem is there's no correlation or causal link between those genes and the genes that give rise to this expression of race, which is an entirely social construct. Because trying to describe someone's race just looking at their genetic code is impossible.
Well, technically, it's very maybe not.
The guy who mentioned that when he wanted to give his blood, they asked for your race. So when you filled out the form, they actually made the request to know your race. Why? Yes. Why would they do that? What would be the point of that? What were they thinking? I'm curious.
So I think So go ahead. I have my own theories, but let's see what I want to hear. What deniability.
So I just want to reiterate what you were saying to see if I can understand, because I think I do quite strongly agree. It's to say that this thing that we call race, which is a social construct, it really has no use value because it fails to accurately describe any sort of behavioral characteristic. Because the taxonomic and morphological genes that give rise to race, they'd have no causation between like genes for intelligence or genes for whatever immunity or individuated weakness.
I don't agree with that at all. You might not agree. You might not agree with the term race, but like there's people from certain regions who just happen to be certain skin colors that have different biological characteristics, genetically and physically. I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, you might not want to call it race. But
here's the crucial factor: there's more of that variation within racial groups than as opposed to different racial groups. That's to say that there's more genetic variation between Black people than there are between Black and white people.
I mean, not really. I mean, you could say like there's
No, yes, really, that's a fact.
Yes,
will you listen to what I'm going to say, or are you just going to cut me off?
Go ahead, Buddha.
All right, so like we know Native Americans are more lactose intolerant. They have enzyme that doesn't let them. I mean, they don't have the enzyme that lets them digest alcohol as well as a lot of other people who are considered other races, even if you don't consider those races. Asians are falling under that category as well. I mean, there's just certain things that apply to these groups that we call races that are undeniable.
So this is why I have a problem with the term race, because because what you just said, you said you don't have to call them races. That's right. You can't call them races because every country categorizes these races in a different kind of way. Where deniability is in South Africa, they're not going to categorize the races in the same way we do here in America. Most forms in America for Asian people just say Asian, and they don't make a distinction between Middle East, Israeli, Far East, Russian, Southeast Asian, or from the Indian subcontinent. All these people are considered one race, and it doesn't matter, anything else besides that. So that's why I'm saying that this is a useless category, because it's based on where what country you're in. That they're going to categorize you.
It's entirely arbitrary. It has no use value, and because it has no use value, the only thing I can see is gained by using race as any sort of variable or metric is that people use it to justify violence. They use it to other people, and it just doesn't make sense.
I think it helps with politics. If you have a particular political narrative and it is based on race, then using these social construct, these markers, they help for your political narrative. But I think somebody was mentioning the diversity, say, within Black people within Africa. And I was just going to agree to that. And not just in Africa. I traveled once all the way to Fiji. And even though they're Black there, I stood out like a sore thumb. They were always curious whenever they saw me. And they kept asking me, where are you from in the villages? And I'd say, I'm from West Africa. And they were like, oh, so, because even though we had black skin, they could clearly see there was my phenotype, and I guess my facial characteristics were different from theirs. But most people don't really think about that. I guess they just think Black people all look the same all over the world, but we're kind of different, and we sometimes freak each other out because of our diversity. So,
yeah, it's almost like calling someone by their name is usually the best bet.
Yeah. But what was I? So deniability. You agree with me that we need to stop asking this race question on all these forums?
Completely. Like it's like if it doesn't matter, why are we using it for a metric? Either way, like it fundamentally, we have the science now to look at people's genetic code and discover their specific individuated weakness. There's no need to say, oh, because he's Black, he's probably going to get sickle cell anemia. It's not like they're not linked. The reason it may be linked is because there might be a particular weakness developed by people from a certain region, and that gene has carried with them over time. But it's got no causal relationship to the genes that give rise to the presentation of race.
I know, but if you're gonna get a test done, is it cheaper to get like an entire genome sequenced, or is it cheaper to ask, what's your ancestry, and we could check for those specific things?
Well, actually, we can't yet, because as I said, there's no way to say you have these genes, you come from X region. We're starting to get there now by running these tests worldwide and globally. But if you go do a genetic test in the UK and your heritage is largely from the UK, you're going to be able to get a really high detailed genetic test where they'll tell you from what percentage, from what city and what village in the United Kingdom your heritage comes from. But that's because there's been a lot of genetic testing in Britain, and they have a lot of information, and they've been able to co-locate people to certain areas. But you do a genetic test in Africa, and you can get some pretty wonky results. So it's not refined yet, but we're trying to build a correlational database, but you can't on a genetic level say, aha, because of this genetic code, you come from this region of the world.
I'd like to also point out, this is a point that your old prof, David Benatar, made deniability, but he made it far more eloquently than I could. When he said that they say that when you answer these questions on these forms, it's based off of how you self-identify, right? It is the race that you identify with. But then simultaneously, they will say that if you misclassify yourself, then measures will be taken against you, which is to say that it is not how you self-identify. It's based on some external criteria. And the external criteria is what the Jim Crow South would have classified you as. They are forcing you to do the dirty work that the government itself used to do by slotting you into some Jim Crow category. And now they're just forcing you to do it yourself.
Yep. It's frustrating. I mean, what does the reason that you need to attach behavioral characteristics to race for any of this shit to make sense is if you tell me that 30% of the prison population is black, unless it's a correlated behavioral characteristic that we know to be causally related by skin color, what does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything. Okay, there's 30% black people in prison. It literally says fuck all. So like, why are we running around?
Well, now here's where you're going to get into a lot of trouble, though. This is where you're overstepping. I mean, I agree with you, but this is where you're going to get in trouble from the perspective of the intersectional anti-racist blah blah blah, is because quoting Ibram Kendi, who was the founder of this anti-racist bullshit, he has said, and I'm not paraphrasing, if we truly believe in the equality of all people, then different outcomes can only be attributed to systemic racism.
What?
Yeah, I swear this is what he says. So if we truly believe in the equality of all people, and people are truly all equal, then we shouldn't see these disparities unless there's some external systemic force applied to a race group.
When did he write that? Do you know what year? It might have had to do with the time he was writing that. I don't know.
Sometime in the last 10 years.
10 years, okay.
There's so many presuppositions in that, I don't even know where to start.
Right, yes. Well, this guy, but the thing is, the problem is this guy, Ibram Kendi, this is a very important name. He's a very big deal in America because he's written all these books about anti-race. He wrote a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And his definition of racism is any policy that produces an unequal result among groups.
You go for it, Dal.
Ibram Kendi is just like he wrote a book and he seems to just.
You're cutting out.
He wrote a book and he seems to just what?
He seems to just make a bunch of radical claims, like without much, if any, justification at all, as far as I can tell. But people seem to get on his bandwagon to some degree, at least the Twitter people.
Oh, yeah. Jack Dorsey donated $10 million to his Center for Anti-Racist Research.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're doing the Oregon thing, right? With the anti-racist math. Has anyone heard about that?
Anti-racist math?
Yes.
Excuse me?
The state of Oregon has passed they're looking into it last I knew, but it's not on the fringe. Yeah, the expectation of wanting kids to get the correct answer in a mathematical question is racist. It's whiteness. Stuff is not fringe anymore.
Yeah. Well, this is what they've been talking about this forever. Like the whole time that I've been involved in education, they keep talking about the SATs being, a racist test. And I mean, it seemed like a pretty fair test when I analyzed it. I was like, okay, I got to know how to do my algebra. I got to know how to read and comprehend. Now, they argue that some of these questions are culturally biased. And in all the research that I've done, I've only been able to find one single question on the SAT that contained any traces of cultural bias. But the math section doesn't have those.
No, yeah. Yep.
So here in South Africa, there's an anti-education movement, and it's predicated on the principle that the white colonizers came to South Africa and they built the universities, which at 1994, Stellenbosch, Rhodes, and the University of Cape Town were in the top 50 universities globally. Now they've shifted down substantially, but they were there, you know. But the white man came and built these universities, and he makes it very difficult for us to get in because we have to speak English and we have to get good grades at school. So they dropped the high school standard by taking out like core curriculum and making the math and English requirements standards very low, so that more African people could in South Africa could meet the bar, as it were. And all it's resulted in is a loss of competency in what were very highly competent organizations. And the very idea that a a scientific truth is false purely because someone of a certain skin tone came up with it is completely offensive to me. And what's more than that is it just so happens to be that the British put a huge effort into converting a substantial portion of the world's knowledge into English at the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge. And to the point where most of the world's literature, even though published in like Russian or Farsi or Swahili, is eventually converted into English. And the way the conversation is had in South Africa, I find strange, because surely we want to be arming our children with the tools they need to engage the reality they'll be presented with. And the fact of the matter is, regardless of how we got here, if you want to be successful in the world, you must be good at maths and specifically English. Like if you want to do business in any country globally, best you speak their language, but if not, your next best thing is English. And pretty much any business in any country that's willing to do business internationally, the business will have people that speak English in it to function that way, because English is, the for better or worse, the business of language. But
Yeah,
it's
I'm getting
taken,
really sick of business culturally appropriating the language.
yeah. But
Yeah,
Get
so
your own language.
go ahead.
it makes it useful, right? Like that's the purpose of language, to
Right.
communicate. Like who cares what language it is? I only care that we all speak one language in a very important endeavor that is business.
When whether that's English or Swahili, I don't really. It should be able to convey the same thing.
Exactly.
But I just posted the very, very famous SAT question, the one that this has been held up for the last 40 years to the ends of the earth to justify getting rid of this thing. Because this one damn question. So if you see, it's an analogy question that says runner marathon, and then you have to pick the analogy that is closest to runner marathon. And the correct answer is oarsman regatta. And
Thanks
as
for giving
we
us a chance.
know, and as well, you would have gotten it. As we know, regatta is a word that only rich white people would know. And so
I didn't know what a regatta was.
Exactly. Well, it says that 53% of white students got that question right, and only 22% of black students got that question right. And but now the problem is, like, you can control
part of the SAT?
What?
Isn't English part of the SAT?
Yes, but the idea is that there is no way that there is no way that a black person would have that word regatta in their vernacular.
Is it in the dictionary?
Yeah,
That's
it's in the
Your
yeah.
job isn't to study your vernacular. Your job is to study the vernacular. And if it is in the vernacular, it is open for a test. That is not racist at all. Study harder.
I think it just depends on the quality of your vocabulary classes, to be honest.
The whole, yeah, I would agree. That's more of a society we need to. That's a poverty issue, not a race issue.
And the fact of the matter remains that like a lot of vocabulary is accessible through books. You don't specifically need to have vocabulary spoon fed to you through a school. Like if you have an appetite to read and you get into the library and you read any like worthwhile authors from the Enlightenment period, it'll increase your vocabulary tenfold almost instantly. And you will come across the word regarded because a lot of the words were different back then. And
On top of that, the SAT is to see how smart you are. If there are 4 answers
Right.
and you don't know what one of the answers means, but none of the other 3 are correct and you know none of the other 3 are correct, you can still get the correct answer. You don't have to know the answer to be smart enough to get it.
Yeah, what kind of surprises me is that the percentage of black children that got the question wrong. So it says 22% of black children got the question right, which is worse than chance.
Do you know what the percentage of poor versus rich were?
Well, no, because
marathon to design points. I mean, an embassy is not a marathon. A massacre is clearly not a marathon, and a stable is clearly not a marathon. The having experienced the word regatta used in popular vocabulary around you.
So it's more of a
And
critical
I've
thinking
got
question.
400 other questions. Like, this is only one question.
yeah, I know. That's why this is so ridiculous, because you can control for this. Like you can get rid of all, like what they've done is this is the part that they don't. They remove all the questions that they claim are culturally biased and just look at scores as if those questions didn't exist. The gap is identical, even when you remove the
Yeah,
questions that
because it's not
supposedly
a
have these
because it's not a
bias.
cultural question. Because in education, you can't ask a cultural question. It's about facts that exist even outside your sphere. You have to go find all the facts.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's
those-
necessarily a race issue. I think it's just, where these areas of bad education are just happen to have a higher density of.
But remember, I'm speaking more to how this is starting to twist us into the future. The in conclusion is of the tensions, and
Hey, you want to talk about racial violence? Check this out. This thing I'm going to post. Another thing from Ibram Kendi that he wants to do. So I just found out about this, that he wanted to do this like a week and a half ago, and I thought it was a joke. But his honest proposal is to create a federal agency called the Department of Anti-Racism, right up there with the Department of Transportation and Agriculture and Education. And it says that the Department of Education would be comprised of formally trained experts on racism. The DOA, I like that it's the same initials as Dead on Arrival. The DOA would be responsible for pre-clearing all local, state, and federal public policies to ensure that they won't yield racial inequity. Monitor those policies, investigate private racist policies, and blah blah blah. So if your town wants to like change property taxes or whatever, no, we got to clear it by the Department of Anti-Racism first.
Oh, because that's going so well in the universities right now.
that sounds like absolute insanity.
That sounds like racial violence to me.
So when I think of racial violence, I'll just pop this here.
Oh gosh, yeah, you talked about that earlier. That's horrendous.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it worrying because I see a movement like Black Lives Matter. They get so upset about George Floyd, which, I mean, either way you take it, it's one death. And I find it tremendously ironic that on the streets of Johannesburg, there were when the whole BLM thing went international after George Floyd, we had protests on the streets of our major city, Johannesburg, and there weren't thousands, there were hundreds of people, and they were protesting police violence in the United States of America, which is statistically is 1.3% of all police action. And here in South Africa, people regularly get tortured and burnt alive, and kangaroo courts, and so much lack of injustice, and all of it stems from either xenophobic, so like South Africans murdering Nigerians or Zimbabweans, or racial, in the case of like killing white people or killing black people when white people kill black people, and it just seems so pointless, and it's the only thing I see happen when we create this random social construct that says nothing about anyone. Like you look white, you look black, who cares? It says nothing about you, and all that we seem to get by focusing on this thing that says nothing is the mass propagation of violence, and I struggle to see the point.
I honestly think it's intentional because, the media, they kind of need radical things to happen in order to get views these days. And that they purposely highlight things that happen to a certain race over others. And, that I think they're just, stoking the flames, really.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly don't help. I mean, it doesn't help when the governor of Illinois declares like George Floyd Day, as a state holiday.
Oh wow! I mean, let's be honest. It's not like this guy was the patron saint of like anything. He was a criminal. I mean,
Well, I heard his lawyer was trying to get the judge to allow him to compare him to Jesus.
I heard that got disallowed. I don't know, but it's madness.
How is that person? Let me know how that person's going to get a fair trial. How is this person going to get a fair trial if the victim of your crime is Jesus?
Well, the judge shut it down. They're not going to let him do it.
And the county or the state already settled with the family. They settled $27 million to the family already. That's already a ding against him also.
And we've paid out. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. Now, I'm not saying that there's an amount of money that can bring somebody's life back, but it just goes against, to me, it goes against this narrative that America just doesn't care. That we're walking down the street. Oh, there's another body hanging from a tree. Like,
oh God,
it's so fucking sensationalist to me, and the pudding is so over-egged.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I walk around town all the time and interact with people with different races, just nonchalantly. I don't even think about it. But like the way they, portray it in the media, it's like, it's a war out here or something.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't live in your country, but from what I've seen in the media, all white North Americans are racists, psychopaths, and the black people they need protecting. So, I mean, if you tell me it's different, I guess I'll have to take your word. You live there, but from what I see, especially from YouTube videos posted from smartphones, I see something that's completely different. But then, it's like you said, I'm just receiving secondhand, third-hand controlled information from various people. I don't actually know what's going on there unless I actually go there myself.
Well, and who's going to post on YouTube the time that the white guy was like, hey, man, what's going on? Like, that's not going to get YouTube views. Like, oh, white dude was nice to me. I better post that. That'll get me 1,000 views. No, they're going to post the fights. Like,
yeah. It's the same problem with when deniability was talking about immigration being immoral. It's like, well, yeah, because we have he didn't mention this, but people bring up often, they have a problem assimilating. And it's like, well, you're looking at people who don't assimilate. You're not looking at, oh, wow, look, 1 million Pakistanis moved into the UK, and now they watch soccer like everyone else, and they root for Manchester, and they have British accents, and they do everything that every other UK citizen does. Yeah, the vast majority of these interactions, of these interracial interactions, don't have any animosity at all. Like, I don't think they're tinged with anything, especially where I live. I mean, I've got the whole world living in my apartment complex. And it's like, it just is such a throwdown to all the people who say the reason why there's harmony in different countries or neighborhoods is because of racial homogeneity. I don't think there's anything innate in that. I don't think there's anything that says that, you know, you're going to devolve into racial violence if you have a diverse neighborhood.
So one thing that we should note is you look at an organization like the KKK, and I believe they're at their peak sort of just after the 1900s of like 3 to 4 million people in their membership. And then
I mean, I thought they hit their peak in 2021 when they made it in the Capitol.
well, see, this is the thing, like
Just a post.
some shit happened in like the around the Great Depression period, and the Klan tried to make moves that people found inappropriate, and they used the system of freedom of speech to out Klan membership, and like a membership list was posted, and people were so ashamed of being linked to the KKK that the membership dwindled like drastically nationwide, and everyone was like abandoning ship movements. But then if you check, the new anti-racist stuff started in the mid 2000s with this introduction of hate speech and hateful acts and trying to make something out of nothing. When that happened, the KKK membership not only started to rise, but right now today you will find people that will openly say they're KKK members, and they will say they are white supremacists. And it just strikes me as ironic that, you know, America brought in all these like cool laws to like give everyone equal rights, and it kind of destroyed this
Well,
like
yeah,
white
it's
Well,
supremacist
so if
movement.
it's on the rise, then
And
we
now
need
it's
an
bouncing back.
anti-racism office, don't we?
well,
I mean, if
like
you're going to say that
two-way
it's on the
street,
rise,
you
then I
know.
think an anti-racism office is a great idea.
Well,
Just saying.
it's
Be careful. That is definitely something that can be turned.
well, like
That's
listen, like
that's a very good
these
name for that.
these groups are coming up vilifying all white people. So I mean, there's probably, you know, a certain portion of the white population that would, you know, take that as like we're being attacked, you know, and like if it's us against them, then I'm going to be on our side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was something that someone said earlier. I don't know if they were joking or if they were serious. When you were talking about the KKK's rise, someone said, no, I actually thought it was in 2021 when they went to the Capitol building. Was that a joke or were you serious?
It was a joke.
Okay, all right.
It was designed, but it was a joke.
Yeah, no, it was a joke. Just yeah, because a lot of members of the KKK tend to enjoy flying the Confederate flag, and there was a Confederate flag carried through the Capitol. It was just a loose association joke.
Therefore, all of them were KKK members because someone saw a Confederate flag somewhere at some point in the ride.
Right. Argument from absurdum for a little laugh. That's all. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, but what the problem is that most people are not, most Americans are not educated on a lot of these terms. They haven't taken a sociology class in the sociology of whiteness to sort of unpack all the nuance of like what whiteness means. Because I mean, I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that like when sociologists talk about whiteness, they're talking about a system. Yeah, they're talking about a system. They're not talking about individual white people. But then when you go to corporate America and you get your first job and you're forced to sit down to this diversity training, the people who make this diversity training often mix up these words. And instead of saying whiteness, they talk about being white or acting white. And that goes against specific individuals who are sitting there listening to this and saying, I don't want to sit here and take this. You know, it's like a corporation is not a philosophy seminar.
No, but even within these, what I would think are pathological social studies arts, like ask them to explain whiteness, and you cannot be racist in the explanation. And for the purposes of the explanation, I'm going to classify you as racist if you attempt to link behavioral characteristics to skin color. So go.
They would just say you can't be racist unless you're imposing power and you're the dominant race or whatever.
Right. So this goes back to the discussion of like punching down versus like punching up, right? So like there's a system where there's one race that's doing the punching and then there's one race that's like being punched, you know what I mean? So like that's like the system. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with whiteness in these views. Can you kind of? I just haven't ever come across it. Can you explain it just so it's out there and everybody's on the same page?
Well, there's a great Smithsonian brochure that they pass out not too long ago that explains it. I'll try and find it and post it.
Oh, at the Whiteness Studies Center or something in DC?
Yeah.
The Whiteness Study Center?
Yeah, you believe that?
Well, it's the Smithsonian. They put out like a list of things that are considered whiteness, and it was ridiculous. It was like, working hard and planning for the future and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, it was one of the few times they actually apologized and took it down. Oh, it was at the Museum of African American History. And then they had a little section on whiteness and what that means.
But that just seems to, like I said, it makes like an obvious truth. Like you should invest for your future, and
Okay, so here
that's just that's a pathological thing of this racial group. And if you want to be made fun of and you identify with investing for the future, now you're going to be white and you're going to be derided for that. And like, surely we want to encourage everyone to invest for their future. Like it seems fairly logical. Like no matter who came up with the concept.
Yeah, so this is on the website for the National Museum of African American History. A quote from author Toni Morrison, who's actually a wonderful author, but I feel like this quote is very outdated. In this country, American means white. Everybody else has to hyphenate. I don't think that's true at all.
Well, he's not wrong. Asian American, African American.
I think maybe in her time that was definitely the case. When people think of America, they don't think of, I don't know, black people. They would think white. In 2021, does that still matter? I don't think so. But then
America it does.
You think so?
Chick Vicious, you've been trying to get in there?
Oh no, sorry. I'm all right.
I just posted those whiteness flyers. Here's some of the examples they give. They said emphasis on the scientific method, work ethic, religion, future orientation, justice, time. Like if you watch the clock, basically, it's ridiculous.
So what? Wait, that just sounded like they were describing a human.
Yeah, well,
but it says here ethics, beauty based on blonde, thin Barbie. Okay, I can't believe they handed these things out. This is fascinating. Thanks, Bo, for sharing this. I didn't know this was actually true. They actually hand these out. Wow.
But like also, so you coming across this for the first time. We said a lot about what we think this stuff does. Now that you've seen this, like, how do you think this has an impact on race relations, as it were?
Well, I'm not white, but I would assume that this would definitely, if you were sitting in a room and they were handing this out, this would definitely, you would feel like you are being demonized for something you probably felt you haven't done wrong. You're just minding your business and you're being pointed out like you're being blamed for a lot of things that you don't think you're responsible for, and you're being demonized, and you feel like you're being used as a scapegoat for some agenda.
I think the worst part of
going
this
on.
is these are like, you know, things that you can use to be successful, and they're telling people it's bad not to use them. You know, it's whiteness.
It's easy to
Yeah, well-
accept it though if you really don't want to put in the effort to build the discipline. That's where the
I mean, even
problem is.
Obama
It's
said
lack of
this.
discipline.
Exactly. Obama said that he was accused of like why are you reading so much? Why are you speaking that way? When he showed academic promise.
Yeah, you hear a lot of YouTubers who are of various, backgrounds. They're called, well, the African Americans, they get called, per their own saying, Uncle Toms as a result. And it's very unfortunate.
Look at this. Look at that. I'm scrolling down. So I think I've seen this list before, but then they give all the examples of whiteness and white privilege. So they emphasize, this is what they emphasize. Being white does not mean you haven't experienced hardships or oppression. Being white means you have not faced hardships or oppression based on the color of your skin. Okay. Well, I'm so glad that as I get stabbed to death, I can take refuge in the fact that it's not happening because of my skin color. So that really makes me feel cozy inside. But this list of different types of white privilege, I just think is like, this is whenever they wrote this, it's just not true anymore. It's not true in 2021. It says, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time.
Yeah.
Is that the Benaji
So-
and Greenwald thing?
So if I walk down as a white dude down the center of Main Street in like Compton or something like that, people are gonna look at me funny, like, "What are you doing?"
Okay, so as a person that other people identify as white, when I walk around South Africa, no.
Sorry, just wanted to check, when these pamphlets are handed out, is it like in a mixed environment with black, brown, or is it just?
No, I don't. I think they just are pamphlets.
Okay.
I don't know if they're handed out. It's kind of an internet thing. Just here's the
Oh,
pamphlet.
I think they would be at that
I think
museum.
the format. It probably, it might be at the museum.
But otherwise, it's on the internet.
Yeah, and I mean, and you get the whole world is walking into these museums in DC. I mean, you get people from all walks of life.
Are they government museums?
They are funded by federal tax dollars, bro.
So is that legal to say those things for them? Like a private company, I can agree with saying that.
Well, you see, again, you don't understand. We're talking about a system that I can't do it. I can't keep talking. I can't keep doing it. It's just so gross.
It honestly makes my skin crawl. And you see, like, Bobby, you talked about like not everyone like is well trained in understanding these terms and these techniques, and rightly so. But like that in and of itself is the problem, because when I hear this stuff, because I've invested like 20 years of my life into politics and political theory and conflict, and like I see the shit that it is for what it is, and I go, no thank you. But because most people don't like have it as a hobby or a professional study, when they see this sort of stuff, I don't think I think they buy it. I mean, certainly, like I look at my parents.
Why not?
They buy everything that comes to them from mass media, and like they talk about these concepts of being buying into propaganda, but then they watch something that's clearly like got a tilt, and they go, "Oh, that's so right." I'm like, "Huh?" So I think maybe the problem is people aren't trained in detecting.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey Jack. What's up, Captain Jack?
We're talking racial violence.
Well, another big part of
my headphones got knocked out. What are we talking about today?
Racial violence and racism in general, I guess.
Racial violence and racism in general. Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
Chick, you were going to say something?
Well, as far as the mainstream media goes, a lot of it is just a simple restriction of information. My mother, I watch her, she watches CNN and MSNBC constantly, and I come from the left myself. I'm not so much anymore, obviously, but she is completely buying into everything that they're trying to sell her, and I'm finding out that it's because she does not know probably 80% of what's actually happening. It's all kept from people who are tuned into the mainstream media. It's not necessarily that their sense making is off, other than the fact that they're just not given all the information.
Can I say that I would not necessarily assign maliciousness to that with the word kept, but not made available, because
Yeah.
it doesn't get clicks.
Well,
I don't know that
I think
it might be
older
malicious.
generations.
I'm not saying that it's not malicious, but I'm saying that I would say that it might just be that it doesn't get clicks, so that's what they say. The tabloids
I just think older
masquerading
generations
as
can't find
true.
other information anywhere else because they don't use the internet as much as people who were probably born after 2000 or even before that. So like if you know where
There's
to
a lot
find.
of 50-year-olds making your internet work, Youngin.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, the majority of people who grew up with no internet really don't transition
The
well.
millennials are in a particular position in that we saw how everything worked. Anyone born after about 2000 to 2005, anyone born after that is not going to have the type of touch I have to the pre-internet era. I lived in a pre-internet era where it didn't exist and got to learn as it was created. Whereas anybody after 2005 is kind of coming into a black box that they're going to have to dig in and go way back into fundamentals and learn a whole lot to catch up.
But that's only in your society, right? Like,
No, I'm talking about. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess there's gonna be some countries that, as they get it, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. But most people in the world don't have access to the internet, and that's why I think this narrative is very dangerous, because the particularly for the working class, which is arguably the overwhelming majority of the world, many of these people, like between raising a family and working 2-3 jobs, they'd even if they had access to the sort of reading material they need to like go through to like form a worthwhile opinion on the subject, they just don't have the time. And so as much as there may also be a limitation from what CNN is providing you, there's a limitation of how much information these people can take in, just because of the other demands of their day-to-day lives. And the what's I find tragic is these are the people that these pathological ideas affect the most, because if you're buy into this idea that the deck's stacked against you, every white person is your enemy, and you can't trust the banks, and you shouldn't build a business, and you shouldn't work hard. Like if you're told like that nihilistic story repetitively over and over and over again, I worry what that does to a human psyche and their ability to function thereafter.
There was a news story, speaking of CNN, they were going over the pandemic's effect on school children and how, depression rates, anxiety rates are going up. I think that's multifactorial, but they threw right in the middle there, Black kids especially are having a hard time. And I know why they said it the way they did. But my first thought was, of course they're having a harder time. They're being told by everybody that everyone hates them for the color of their skin, whether that's true or not. How can you? I cannot imagine what that must be doing to a whole huge number of people.
Yeah,
And on top of that,
I agree completely, because if somebody had told me this straight up, that people were hating me because I was a white person, and the only reason that they hated me was because I was white, I'd be pretty upset.
Well, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think you don't have any way to get ahead in life, you're just not even going to try.
Well,
everyone's told they can't do something.
Hold on. Well, yeah, I was about to say, where do we start that? Because of course, if you feel like you're not going to be able to do anything, you're not going to be able to do anything. Because
well, yeah, no, but that's what we're telling them though. We're like, you can't get ahead because racism is keeping you down.
We're telling them.
Well,
Not weird, but like
I
society.
I can say that. So last year I did an interview for a school that I was thinking about switching over to. This was a high school, and this is a public high school. I mean, it's a charter school, so it gets to do pretty much what it wants, but it uses tax dollars. And in the interview, they told me, so how are you going to address the race question in your, and first of all, I'm like, I'm teaching math. Okay. The whole reason why I went into this subject is because I love that it's clean and I don't have to talk about this crap. But what I do like to tell them, and I've brought this up a couple of times, is that on the first day of school, I show them a study that shows a correlation between state math test scores in high school and socioeconomic success later in life. And doesn't matter what gender, what race, where you grew up, or if English is your first language, if you control for high school state math test scores, those two people achieve the same socioeconomic success later in life. So I advertise it as math is the equalizer. It is the thing that can get you to wherever you want to go. Because look, math doesn't care about any of these things. And the principal and the math department that was interviewing me, they were not having that. This message was way too egalitarian for them.
We want to get rid of
it was too egalitarian in what way? Like when you brought this up to them and you were like, "This is how I feel about this." What was their response?
Well, they said that we're going to be reading.
Not to be racist.
Exactly.
No, that's
exactly.
hold on. I want to hear what the actual response was. If that's okay.
So they said that we are going to be having them read White Fragility and How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi, and they want me to talk about that and somehow work that into my curriculum.
That's
said,
okay. That's okay. That's
I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's pretty hard. Okay, so that's what I wanted to hear. Sorry.
At least I'm glad that they were at least upfront with me about it.
I wanted to, but that's what I'm saying. I wanted to hear that was the thing, and then be like, okay, these people are.
I just don't get what you're supposed to say to the students, like, "Oh, well, white people would solve it this way." You know, I mean, I don't
know. This is the problem. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to give you what you want. Like,
I mean, yeah, no, there's no specific like race solving ways of specific shit. I mean, like, if you want to like, and even saying white is overarching in so many different races.
So I told you
so many different nationalities. Like when you say this person's got white skin, like you're looking at like so many different kinds of people.
So as a kid, and I told the story earlier of how in South Africa, to address how African students in South Africa were struggling with math and English, they lowered the standard to the point where to pass in high school in South Africa, the grade 12 standard has been lowered to the previous grade 9 standard, and you only need to pass with a 35% to pass for math.
35%?
Yeah, because their thinking was.
I wish I could have passed with 35%.
Their thinking was that because all these African people have been disadvantaged by apartheid, that if we just lower the bars and get them the qualifications,
that's not correct.
But it's just like you guys have a mild version of like
when you have to yell at the messenger because the message is so fucking stupid.
So in America, you have this practice in your universities of lowering bar for African Americans, and I can tell you that like
we have it to.
We've taken that to an extreme, and
we've done it to a couple of races. It's not just African Americans. It's African Americans, anybody who comes from the islands that surround our territories, Spanish speaking people, and people from Canada. Yeah,
they actually raised the bar for Asians.
They raised. That's why I didn't say Asians, because they raised the bar for Asians. But they've lowered the bar for everyone else, though.
But to demonstrate how it's such a self-fulfilling prophecy, So we've done this to fuck our education system and disarm like our population to the point now that when this concept of white privilege that was developed by fucking morons in America came to South Africa and its characteristics changed to like describe it in a South African context, what happened is white people ended up dying because they decided that white people are more likely to get bank loans than black people, and this is clear fucking racism. Turns out, when you actually get into it, and the banks were like, "No, that's not the case," and they showed to a closed audience, because obviously it's privileged information. They showed the quality of the applications that they received. And like the applications from black people, because they haven't been given a math foundation, they know nothing about finance and structuring, so they're literally like going, I need to buy a truck for this amount of money and I'm going to be a truck driver. And like things like, I want to buy this property, I don't know what rental income it is, but I want you to lend me R1 million to buy the property. And like from a bank's perspective, you can't grant a loan on something like that. And
no, I see where you're coming from completely.
Yeah, and what I find remarkable, and this is why I'm a libertarian, is when this was like sort of discovered, like the private market stepped in and went off like fucking wolves, and like
Real quick,
they're like, okay, cool. If you struggle to, if you have, because many of these black people have very good businesses, they just struggle to describe it mathematically and financially in the way a bank expects that. And a whole industry popped up around
do you think
consulting to these black businesses and providing the mathematical skill at huge expense.
Are we specifically talking about outside of America?
We're talking
He's in South Africa.
globally. Yeah, I'm just talking about
South Africa specifically. Okay.
The precise contradiction I opened the discussion up with was, in Africa, racial violence and xenophobic violence takes the form of actual horrific violence.
Right, of course. Yeah. No, I will agree with that. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. The form of violence there in comparison to America is extreme.
Yeah. But then I think moreover than that, in America, you guys got the formula for decreasing racism correct around the 1930s, and it just sort of needed to reiterate over multiple generations to eliminate racism slowly over time, and it seems to have largely worked to a massive degree.
Well, the thing is that America in itself, the biggest problem with racism that people see in America is that it is the fact that we have the largest diversity of any country ever. And it's really difficult to make sure that every single fucking diversity or every single version of who's diverse and every single person is represented and held up in a proper way, because there's
Equality
so
of
many
opportunity, not
different
equality of outcome.
Yeah, there's just so many. There's so exactly of opportunity. There's just so many people that all we can do is provide. Like there's just so much shit. We can only do so much based on how many people exist within America. You know what I mean? And like we're trying. We really do.
That's why you need to center the discussion around individuated rights and not the rights afforded to groups.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just explaining the generalization of what I'm talking about.
That's why.
No, but the solution to that very precise problem in managing a massive society that you pointed out is just to you focus on the individual as the correct unit of measurement, and you give that individual all the rights they need to flourish. And
well, that's what I expected America to be doing this entire time.
Yeah, it's the equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome argument, basically. So most of the social engineers in America right now, they're trying to change the outcomes instead of, providing everybody an equal opportunity to, flourish.
Yeah.
Isn't that the problem?
And it's funny because they're like,
well, everybody, okay, hold on. Everybody in America should have the exact same amount of chance to do what anybody else does.
Everybody does.
I think that's what these guys are honestly trying to do. I think I think legitimately, if you sat them down and asked them, "Are you looking for equality of opportunity?" they would say yes. And then when you ask
Equality
them,
of outcome is fucking
hold on.
it's irresponsible and to ask
Yeah,
for.
yeah. But the thing is, when you ask them how they can achieve equality of opportunity and what metrics they use to measure if we have equality of opportunity, they will give you equality of outcome results. And so I don't think it's as pathological as them seeking equality of outcome and the consequences thereof. I think they are
They
legitimately
will
looking for
intentionally
equality of
hire
opportunity.
people. They will intentionally hire people so they match the proportion of the population. You know,
Yeah. So it obviously leads them to a fallacy, right? And this is the fallacy. And when you use equality of outcome measurements to measure if you have equality of opportunity, when the only real thing you need for equality of opportunity is to see if rights are equal under law. The rest we might want to be able to change as a society from a governmental perspective, but there's all the evidence to believe that it just can't be done. You need to leave it to give everyone their freedoms and leave it to iterate over time and for people to start flourishing. Like you can't engage in forcing social change from a government perspective. It always seems to end in the wrong conclusions.
that was a pretty squeaky door.
Sorry.
It was though. Let's see.
Anybody
So
feel like someone logged in on AIM?
wait, what'd you say?
Alexander,
didn't hear what you said.
Do you have anything to say on this? You've been very quiet all night.
Dalsu, Alexander.
Just kind of listening and said.
I pretty much agree with.
I guess we're done, guys.
No Dalsu. Hold on.
Deniability. Yeah, I pretty much agree with deniability and forgot who else was
Killian?
agreeing with him. But
It was Bobby. He's left now there.
I see.
Bobby's gone.
But yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys. Like, race is essentially like a very vague, broad label that doesn't make sense when you actually look at the science of what's going on. And
well,
so
we're all human.
Yeah, we're all individual meat mechs that require our own individual meat mech maintenance systems.
That's exactly. It's
Hey,
very
that's
difficult to
mine,
try
Cal.
and generalize that.
Gal,
Yes.
you're treading.
I'm treading.
Ooh, he threatened you.
No, he's walking on what when I was trying to figure things out, I call this meat mix. And he liked
meat mix is a term I just learned from my girlfriend, actually, and I've been using it. I like it.
Oh, yeah. The pleasure drives meat mix. We aren't our bodies.
No, we are our brains. That's one of the craziest things that people need to understand. We
I don't
are
believe you.
we are the little like electronic machines inside of our heads that found a way to
me,
carve
that makes
information
you
inside of our
presuppositionalist.
heads. Well, I mean, but that's what happens as far as we can tell. Is like you look at our brains and what information we have is carved inside of our heads with electricity. I don't know what to tell you.
Prove I didn't just make it that way, or you didn't just make it that way.
Prove it. Well, I can tell you that I didn't because I know I didn't.
Only because you say you didn't.
Yeah, but that's because that makes it true. So we want to continue on from somebody else's perspective. We can.
We don't have to prove it. I don't have
Jesus
to prove
Christ, man.
I don't know. We probably shouldn't get out to this on the live stream. But yeah, race.
What a tragedy!
There are a lot of ways to disprove everybody's thing every time that we do it. It's really weird. Everybody's thing has a thing, and that's why everybody does it up until we don't have a thing for the thing.
That was very specific.
That's why it gets quiet. like it has been for
That's
the.
what I would say.
But that's
what I
why it
would
gets
say
quiet is
generally.
what I just said. The reason why it gets quiet and like almost everybody doesn't talk is because of what I just said.
Yeah, because there isn't anything else except you guys presuppose that the external world is external to you. But back to racism, deniability. You had some more stuff you wanted to talk about?
No. Well, Killing, you bring up an interesting thing. That's specifically why I think moral subjectivists, like the moral relativists, and all the people that think purely because something comes from a subjective mind that like no point talking about the rest of it. Just because something comes from a subjective mind doesn't mean it's necessarily not an objective truth.
Well, while I half agree with that statement, I disagree that there is objective truth.
So the theory of like for the purposes of how I define it, I see
for how you define it. Okay, how do you define it? Sorry.
I feel like if we dig into this, it'll take way too long.
Objective is something that is true whether I'm considering it or not.
Oh.
So like
okay, my bad.
Is objective truth, right?
Okay, sorry. Somebody could also say God is objective truth, then I'd have to figure out what their version of what they're talking about is. Okay.
No, but
that's why, and that distinction right there is why Christians say atheists have a religion, because they can't understand the difference between what you're saying.
Why is that? Because I'm trying to clarify?
No, deniability has a religion because he has an objective truth. Though what he is describing as an objective truth is not the same type of objective truth that they say God.
But I'm also an atheist.
I mean, it's clearly objectively true if it's happening without a subjective mind considering it. If it's happening purely because of a subjective mind considering it, then it's subjective in one's mind. It's not evidently true outside of the mind. But I don't see how you can say that gravity isn't an objective truth.
That's what I'm talking about. So, as far as we're aware, no matter where we are, and actually that's not true. There's a few places on Earth where gravity can be tricky, but for the most part, consistently, gravity is what it is.
An objective truth.
Yeah, which is.
I mean, it's a
the math equation. It's the math equation.
It's a property of our universe that we can
explain mathematically. Hold on. On Earth, it's the math equation here, which is like fucking what 9 point something feet per second per second.
We know of is here.
I hope that's what we're judging it on, and that's what I'm trying to make sure that we're doing it.
Yeah, that's what you're getting. That's the end of the path that you're going down. The only place that meaning exists is here. Yes.
Why did we get into the subjective thing?
Well, somebody said something about it. We started on it. I don't know.
I know, but I feel like if we go down this rabbit hole, it's going to take way too long.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know who started it, and that's what we started on.
Let's steer back to racial violence. But I know I cut you off.
Racial violence.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how much racial violence we impart on all.
Okay, hold on. Okay.
That we make learn so much math because they have to.
Hold on. I want to make this. I want to make sure I understand in what context we're talking. Racial violence in general. Racial violence. With today, 2021, racial violence, 1994. What are we talking about?
Modern day global racial violence.
Right now, 2021, modern day global racial violence. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify what we're talking about so I'm not confused.
I think the question is like, is it on the rise?
Racial violence?
Or was racial or xenophobic violence was the topic?
In where I live, I don't see it whatsoever. So I like even a little bit.
From that perspective, like that's fundamentally why
I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
I don't think you have actual racism in westernized developed nations. But the thing is, when you go into the developing world, the racial violence and xenophobic violence does have a correlative rise with a decrease in economic output. When people feel economic pressure and their livelihoods
Nobody
are
has robbed
they
my gas station in the last 9 months.
yeah, but you live in a country with 4% unemployment. So the developing world has anywhere between 35 5% unemployment.
Fair enough.
Just think of stop and think for a moment.
Well, I'm not sure what we're comparing this to, which is why I asked for clarification when we started.
Well, no, we can look at multiple contexts, and right,
Well-
like I'm at least trying to make the case that the anti-racist movement in America is turning into something horrible that I think ends up perpetuating racial violence. And I
Okay, I
think
agree with that. I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think people in the West have lost perspective on what actual racial violence is and what they are trying to prevent through having these conversations. And I think one ought to look at the developing world to see where
I think the
these
last
things
time true
move
racial violence
to
was in the streets was in the 60s or the 50s and maybe early 70s.
Whereas just last week, a Zimbabwean was murdered by a South African.
I'm talking about in America.
Yeah. No, but it's I'm just saying, offering it as a comparison. You know, you guys
No,
have run
I
really
see it. I see what you're saying. I'm not fighting it.
racial violence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what's even more worrisome is the anti-racist movement seems to be sort of pair bonded with the class movements and the new modern day Marxism and socialist thinking, and that is precisely what's wrong with the developing world.
There seems to be an interest in America where socialism, Marxism is appealing in a lot of ways. Where if you take a look at,
I don't understand why, because if you look at immigration,
I don't understand why either, to be honest with you. But
the more democratic and the more capitalist a society is, the more of an immigration problem they have. South Africa is the most democratic and most capitalist society on the African continent. We also happen to have the worst illegal immigration problem on the African continent. America is the best democracy and capitalist society on the planet, and it has the biggest problem with immigration. People want democracy and capitalism. No one was trying to get into the Soviet Union. Everyone was trying to get out. No one's trying to go to Venezuela and build a life. Like it's
so
I don't
you're specifically
know
talking
why.
about, you understand why the nations that are being filled up with people are, and you're confused why certain nations aren't.
No, I'm not confused why certain nations aren't. I think I know why certain nations aren't. I think because of the rise of a majority socialist and communistic practice over democratic and capitalistic reforms, let's say. These countries
that makes more
have
sense.
lacked to flourish over time, and as a result, their populations are abandoning ship and going to countries that offer democracy and capitalism because they see it, after having lived the socialist and communist experience, as a better way to live.
That makes a lot of sense to me at this point.
You have Americans that have life's difficult and suffering is relative, but Americans have it the best out of everyone on the planet.
So I lived in Phoenix, which is, I think at the time when I lived in it, I'm not 100% sure about currently, but I remember it being the 5th biggest city in the United States. When I lived there, there's always homeless people, like constantly, even in the nicest area of downtown Phoenix, there was homeless people, and it was interesting to watch how, like, as I stayed there for a few years, it was interesting to watch how the system with homeless people worked, because they work on their own system that they don't have described, and it's really interesting because I've worked down there for 2 years, and every like 3 to 6 months, they would change. Homeless people would change. There would be like a difference between like people there between October and December, and people there between January and like March. And there
So
would
they
be
have
like
like migration patterns?
Yeah, they did, between different areas of the city. And the interesting part of it is that some of them would come and like I would have an entire season where the people that I was talking to really only wanted to talk and get food. And then I would also have another season of people that if I offered them food, they'd tell me to fuck off and give me either cash or gas. And then I'd tell those people they can go fuck themselves. And then they'd either want to pick a fight with me or leave me alone because the cops are nearby. And if they wanted to pick a fight with me, well,
sounds like they're living the most
I
real
left
life.
alone.
Sounds like a beautiful tribal nomadic living.
And
now that you've experienced that in a population with an average 4 to 5% unemployment, imagine what that looks like in a population of 65% unemployment.
I can only imagine it looks even worse. I've been propositioned by people in that city. I've been propositioned at least 2 or 3 times by males to suck their dick or to have them suck my dick for money, just on my way home from work.
Wow.
Like, it's happened at least 2 or 3 times where someone, when I was on my way home to go to like from work, it was like 2 in the morning, a homeless person or another homeless person would be like, hey, you want to fuck me for some money, or you want me to fuck you for some money?
How did we get here?
We got here by talking about how depraved humanity is, and I'm talking about my specific experience in Phoenix, Arizona.
Well, I'm not gay, but $20 is $20.
I mean, if you want your dick sucked for $20, I mean, Phoenix, Arizona is the way to go.
Sacramento's not that bad either.
I mean, hey man, maybe Sacramento's pretty good too.
That your first-hand experience?
No, never. Just seen people ask me for it quite a bit. It's going home and coming
to have
back.
a high rating.
See, I would work from anywhere from, because I started work at about 7 in the morning until about 2 in the afternoon. And then I would go home from 2 in the afternoon to 3 in the afternoon. And then I would work from 4 in the afternoon until midnight. And then I would come home at 2 when we were actually done closing. And then I would go to sleep and wake up and go to work at 7. And then when I decided that that wasn't enough for me, I decided to punish myself even more by deciding to take mushrooms in between all that. And I decided to take about 1/8 of mushrooms almost every other night for about a month and a half to 2 months. And I went into work as the high of my mushrooms were wearing off. And I finished work just enough to go home and take a nap, to go back to work, to go home, to go to sleep, to take mushrooms, to be high for work, to go to sleep, to go to work.
It sounds like you're making an interesting challenge of your life.
That was just a section of my life. That was just a section of what I went through.
Thank you for that. Just to try to bring you back to topic here, I had a question for the room. I think we've talked a lot about like using equality of outcome measures to look for equality of opportunity. But maybe a more interesting question would be, how would you guys? What sort of metrics would you guys use to establish if there was true equality of opportunity? Like, it's no good just saying that like we have it. Like, how would you go about proving it?
I would say
Yeah.
improve education in inner city
True
schools.
equality of opportunity. When you say that to me, that means like if you mean it to mean everything, like true opportunity of every possible career.
No, equality of opportunity simply means that if you can seize the opportunity, you have the opportunity to do so. That you're not like
Yeah, which means that
blocked
everybody in any
unreasonably.
if anybody thinks they can seize the opportunity in any career that they're going.
As long as you have the means to do so, right? So like,
Yeah.
he's basically saying, if you're on an equal playing field from the beginning, you can do whatever you want to do, basically, as long as it's within your IQ and capacity to do so.
Yeah.
I feel it's the time to bring up UBI. Do you guys think universal basic income would help with
Okay,
that sort of
so
thing, equal opportunity?
IQ doesn't have anything to
Okay.
do with it.
If
Look at
you
Jack Ma, Alibaba.
if you have the ability to so if we decide like just like I don't know, you have to pick a nation. It's kind of the weird thing about the way that this starts out, because you can't just start out with like a fresh nation where this just happened. I guess if you just pick a nation, man, that's so difficult to just start with, because you have to like completely start without something that completely doesn't contradict that.
It's hard to have true equality of opportunity just because
That's what I'm saying.
Not everybody has has the same IQ, and they don't have the same culture, and it's just really hard to do it. But I think one way we can go about it is trying to like make at least education not like standardized, but like equally good throughout society, because there's a lot of places that are just especially like in inner cities that just have really subpar education, and a lot of the things that are attributed to racism are actually because people just got a crappy education because of where they live.
So I don't know if this is true. It might just be like an urban meme myth, but I heard via someone else that a study was done in America that found that children that had home environments with shelves of books on the wall, that they would do better at school.
Yes.
And so they decided to roll out wallpaper in poor neighborhoods, such that poor people could have the appearance of books on the wall, but it didn't seem to have this effect, even though they had spotted this correlation. And it was told to me that what was sort of missing from the study was the obvious fact that children who had shelves of books at home had parents who had purchased shelves of books and had read those shelves of books and were able to take part in their children's education, and that's why they were doing better. So
I mean,
when you say
yes and
even if
no.
you standardize schooling, like you still have a uneven playing field on the individuated level. And just to give you a small thought experiment, what if say we are all truly equal, and I decide to be a blacksmith, and I become really good at becoming a blacksmith to the point where everyone likes my work. But then instead of like, but then I pass those skills on to my child, and now my child has a significant advantage to becoming a blacksmith over anyone else.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's no amount of social engineering you can do to like fix who your parents are.
my focus, I'm not gonna lie, it seems like a silly focus at this point, but honestly, I'm starting to really believe that it's a focus that needs to be had. If I have kids, and as is my focus as the world is going right now, I'm going to be focusing on green zone and the way the world's going to be moving in the next couple of years, couple of decades. And I'm going to try and start moving my family off the grid because the world that
I'm
we're
working on a
starting
product for that.
the world we're starting to live in is really sad and depressing to me. And the fact that we can get to where I can make at least my family specifically like be zero impact or less than zero impact on the earth, then I'll be happy.
The problem is for me is that's necessarily a cop out because it's only a moral and just thing to do, and this is maybe a Kantian critique. If you expand that out and everyone could live that way, and there's
You
not
can't
enough
help everybody.
land. No,
You
there's
can't
not
help
enough
everybody.
land to live
No,
everyone.
we all
mori.
can live that way, but I can't help everyone.
Memento
Yeah.
mori.
No,
Let God give me the grace to understand the things I cannot change and the strength to change the things I can. It's what Stoicism like.
I
Yes,
don't
you have
believe
a
in
moral
God,
imperative.
but that makes sense.
No, but
Well,
the thing is,
version of Stoicism. Yeah, I mean,
no, but
it's
the
almost the same thing.
reason it's a cop out is we need to find technologies that are of the same
But that-
approximates that allow you to live off grid with a single family, but we need
Well,
to approximate that to a much larger city level population and get cities
Well,
down to
I
grid.
agree with that, but I also
I have a
don't
rebuttal
think
to
that
that.
it's necessary for me specifically to be involved with that project. I
If
believe
he
that
gets-
needs to happen.
If I get my family to the point to where I can live off grid, I then don't have the economic pressures to have a job and can work on those technologies for fun. And if more people do that, we start getting a much more maker and set up society where it's just what you can physically make is what happens.
I honestly, I hate to agree instantly with, but I have kind of a survivalist policy in my life where if I have the ability to create a survivalist type home for myself without the world going to too much shit, I just will, and even to the detriment of those around me, because unfortunately I am a self-serving person with self-serving needs that unfortunately includes me being able to see, recall, and understand those things because I'm selfish.
But you're not opposed to doing things to help those around you to make your life easier, correct?
Both, yes. I'm not
Right,
only
so-
selfish. I'm not only selfish, but I wish to help those around me because I'm selfish.
And as long as you aim for net zero and lean towards positive, that's a net positive overall.
I was just gonna say that.
But
too.
trying to go to this massive
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. No. There's.
if
I
a
can't argue
million
with. I
people-
can't argue with it. Yeah.
If a million
yeah.
people aim at zero and lean one tick right, that's a million right ticks. Versus
Yeah.
one person having to generate a million right ticks on their own.
Right.
The general person has the moral imperative to be neutral plus one. To grandstand and try to be the
Whereas
most,
personally, as long as I
is
care
just
about
as
you.
evil. Right.
Yeah.
To go more than that and to say that you have a moral imperative to do more than that is
For myself.
just as Sith-like as to say something as to hold them down.
No, I hold no illusions in what my moral imperative is.
Right.
Because my moral imperative is to help those who I can, and if I can't, I'm sorry. That's what it is. Is if I can help you with what is going on with what I can do, then I will, and if I can't, then I can't, and I apologize because I wish I could.
I'm not going to decrease my well-being worrying about something I cannot help.
Exactly. Because I can't. Because if I could, I would. Because if I could, I would.
If I could, I would.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to pass the mic around there a little bit, guys. I see Chick Vicious and Daltu have unmuted. Do you guys want to get in there?
I'll mute for a minute.
Oh, I didn't even realize. Sorry, I'm good.
God wanted the conversation to end. So anything you want to talk about?
I laughed really hard right now, but
Okay,
it wasn't.
okay. That was a joke. I hope it landed somewhere.
No, I did. I laughed really hard, but I had hit the mute button. I didn't think anybody wanted like canned laughter, so I stopped.
Driving.
I think UBI should be paid for by the intellectual capital or in America specifically. I think UBI could be funded by the intellectual capital generated by tech companies by the use of their technologies offshore and getting the money in through different tax loopholes. I think if we close those up, we could pay a decent UBI across. And that, I think, would help limit, it would give more opportunity, equality of opportunity. Give people housing, food, and basic utilities, and then anything above that, figure it out.
Yeah, I'm kind of pro UBI. I'm not totally sure where I stand, but I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of like utilize, like if you structure it a certain way, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like if we build society. The productivity of the corporations to fuel the what would it be, like standard of living for the average person.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, just making sure. Are we on the same topic?
Yeah, I don't know enough about UBI to really contribute much to the discussion. It really feels like one of the priorities to that would have to be some fail safes behind making sure that inflation doesn't just go out of control immediately, you know?
Okay, can we shit. Can you tell me what the main version of what we were just talking about was with that?
UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, are we talking about that within the United States or just?
I'm not sure. It was kind of a generalized talk about it. Like I said, I don't really know enough about it to really contribute much.
All I know
It
is that
seems
in the
like
United States it's interesting because if we talk about a basic income, the middle of the United States, like Minnesota, would do really well with like a $12 to $13 an hour income, whereas places like New York would probably do a lot better with an 18 to 17 an hour income, because just because the land differences and the property and tax differences in the area. I know for a fact that cigarettes in certain areas outside of Arizona, which is where I live, cost like $2 to $3 extra from where I
I
live.
Do you mean as like a
recently
minimum wage?
quit.
Well,
Yeah,
as
you're
like a
thinking
tax.
minimum wage. Oh, you
Oh
mean
yeah,
the 12 to 13 an hour you're referring to though?
yeah,
And the cost of living overall being higher in certain areas. Yeah, I
yeah.
have the same feeling. Universal basic income is actually a supplementary, what is it, a monthly additional supplementation in addition to anything you earn on your own. So the proposal was, whatever you make for your job plus an extra 600 a month, I think.
Plus an extra. I wish I got an extra 600 a month. That's what I mean.
Exactly, but it sounds like if it were a good idea, it's something that would have been brought up a long time ago. It really feels like an oversimplified, and like you said, there's different areas that, I mean, you really can't treat every single person identically,
No,
but you
you
want to
can't even
try
treat
to
certain
not
areas
discriminate too.
identically.
Well, I think it could be.
Right, yeah.
I think it could be like welfare too, where it kind of
Well,
incentivizes not working as
you
much. You know.
Yeah, that's the main
yes
criticism.
and
You're right.
you kind of hit the edge area with that.
I think any system that you bring up that is designed to help people, there are going to be some people that take advantage of it. I think
Well,
they're
there
hoping that
always
the
will be.
net that yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, that's a tough call, and I'm not sure exactly what the details are behind it, but I would think that one of the main things they'd have to do is put some serious thought into making sure that inflation doesn't go right off the rails immediately.
Well, one of the things that I get confused with is like, at least in America, we start with a minimum wage for certain parts of the United States. Now, minimum wage at $15 an hour is interesting to me across the board, because the way that works, at least to me, at least at how I understand things, and please somebody step in and tell me I'm an asshole if I'm wrong. The way that I see things going is that you have milk, at like 250, 225 before recently when minimum wage started to go up, and now you've got minimum wage starting to go at $15, which
But
means that. Go ahead. Stop.
Well, I think the thing is that minimum wage hasn't gone up proportionally with inflation, so things
You're right.
are
That's exactly where I'm
yeah,
going.
yeah. So things are costing more
Yeah.
for people having less money, basically.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. Yeah, exactly. Is
So
that
like
you can have $15 an hour as your wage, but the problems is that now milk costs $3.50.
$4. Yeah, exactly. And yeah,
And
there's not a lot of thought behind that either from what I gather. It's just, oh, this sounds good. Let's write it through.
and the problem with that is that once it doubles to the point where you're paying $7 to $8 for 2 gallons of milk, almost $10. Like you're like, wow, it really is a problem for me to make food or to create this, which creates more for my family. And all those things, and people take that very lightly, and there are things that you can make with all that stuff that doesn't have to cost what it costs via what you buy from the market, if you decide to make it that way, which is very few people. But
Right.
I'm not making a case for a lot of people in that specific aspect. It's very, very few people.
And they're trying to disincentivize that too with the attacks on. I don't know if I think you stepped in afterwards, but they brought up the pamphlets that were put up at the Smithsonian about whiteness. Did you happen to see that?
No, I have no clue about whiteness.
Yes.
Yeah,
What?
they're in the
Whiteness?
chat. Yeah, they're in the live chat text area. If you, I posted them, but it's like
whiteness.
Yep, and one of
Can
those
somebody
happens
describe
to
to
be
me what that means, real quick?
not easily. No. It's just I think every institution approaches this whiteness thing a little bit differently, even though the themes run kind of parallel to each other. And you'll see if you take a look at that some of the key indicators of whiteness, or being a white person, have to do with hard work, discipline, planning ahead,
What?
saving for the future. Oh yes.
delayed gratification was one of them.
Yep.
Does that sound doesn't that sound like anybody who's working towards the future?
What alarms me is the number of people that are not really speaking up when they see that,
No, but this is what you need when you're working towards the future.
Yes.
All the things that you just said. Those are the things that
I
you're going to do when you're working towards.
I think working towards the future in itself, it would be considered whiteness under that.
Right.
Under that thing. So they're basically like.
Why is it? Where does that qualifier come from?
I don't know. It's some politically correct nonsense.
That's bullshit. Where does I want to know where the qualifier comes from. How does that work?
I don't know if they disclosed very much of that. It's kind of
that kind of sounds like horseshit to me. I want to know where that qualifier comes from, because that sounds like you just so happen to not but be what we're talking about, so fuck you. And that's not okay.
A little bit.
That's not okay. Like I'm really confused at that point. I really would like if Pangburn's listening, I would really like him to step in if he thinks he's got something on this. That'd be pretty tight. But I'm very fucking confused at this point at how that reconciles itself, because it doesn't right now.
Yeah, basically it's just a bunch of traits that, are required to have a successful life, but they're saying that, that's just like whiteness that's imposed on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would like to see how those traits work out, and the only person I can ask is Travis, and he's either listening or taking a shit. And he's probably taking a shit. So I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of sense making behind a lot of these statements, and they're not, coming out from the Smithsonian. To their credit, they did retract it and apologize.
I'd be okay with being told I'm a liar, even. Like, if they're like, you're a liar with what you said, I'd be
as
like,
an individual.
well, cool. Well, yeah, I'd be cool with that, just because to know I'm wrong.
Right.
Well, I mean,
oh yeah.
The thing is, they apologize, but it's probably just because of social pressure. They probably still believe that stuff. Like.
Yeah,
it just doesn't seem like it lands that way ever. It doesn't seem like they ever curve towards that direction.
Towards what direction?
Well, towards the direction where they're actually showing people that's what they're doing, instead of making people figure it out and then realize, oh, well, now I have to change what I thought. Like they're directing people to their way, and then like, oh, okay, then instead of just showing people the way, I'm giving people a way and then subverting it, and now they've got to figure out the way, which is complicated unnecessarily. Yeah, it's uncomplicated. It's complicated unnecessarily.
Yeah, I mean, and the other problem is that there's a lot of platforms, a lot of places where they do not allow people to really talk about it.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the places that I'm
try
happy
to discuss it, apparently.
Yeah. I'm happy one of the places I do get to discuss it is here. And honestly, like I really do feel, specifically in this server, that I'm looked at as kind of a dummy. Like I feel like it happens quite a bit, and it's not a big deal if it does, or if that's the way.
I don't think anybody's judging.
No, I really do. I think maybe Pangburn thinks that way. I'm not 100% sure, but that's the way it seemed like as I've gone through here.
It doesn't seem
It's
that
been
way
a
to
long
me.
time too. Well, it's been a long time since I've been through here too, because the last time I was through here was like 7 months ago.
Oh wow. Yeah, I just started yesterday.
I've gone through here, and then I left, and then I came back.
Yeah, I just came back after a while.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I've
said it yesterday.
yeah, it's been a minute since I've come back because there was a lot of stuff in my own life that I was like unsure about, and like I didn't feel like it was okay for me to try and make specific claims if I'm not okay with it in my own life. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be okay. And and the least thing that I can do to afford to other people in my life is to be fair. Because that's all I want. I want things to be fair to people. If I can, at my very best, I want things to be fair.
If you apply that with open-mindedness, that's, certainly something that's noble and needed in this world.
Yeah, I as far as I can within my grasp, I want things to be fair.
Yeah, I myself, I'm just starting to begin to understand what that actually means and seeing the benefits of it.
Well, because there's a lot of ways to view reality. And that is that you're the window that looks through everything. You are all the windows that look through everything. You are the one who looks through the windows, or you are the one who watches the one who looks through the windows.
No, that's not the talk of a dummy, by the way.
Definitely, at least very philosophical.
And you can't pick those things. That's just kind of what comes to you. And I think I'm a person who looks through what comes through the windows. I don't think I'm one who makes up what comes through there. I'm just think I'm somebody who sees what happens.
You observe, you're the observer.
In my mind, yeah.
Oh. I don't think a lot of people are, so I mean, if that's the case, that's actually pretty cool. I really like that.
I feel like a lot of people just are driven by emotion.
And that's another thing that's being perpetuated in society too, is if it feels good, do it. And it's not necessarily hedonism either. It's just, the whole whiteness thing. The other thing is telling the truth, because you can't be offensive, right? You got to tiptoe around people, even if they maybe would benefit from hearing something that they don't like at first, but would really benefit from in the long run. It's just not allowed anymore. That's the big thing I'm learning right now. And just another thing too, you were mentioning about if you ever have kids in the future, you are kind of tossing around the idea about going off the grid. I definitely can understand that. I live pretty far out in the country, by no means off the grid. Obviously, I'm on my cell phone and whatnot. But I've got a 4-year-old, and I think I'm going to take a different approach with it. I think it's probably necessary to integrate him as much as possible into the world that he's going to be, maneuvering. And I'm just trying to learn as much as I can to help him orient it properly, even if it's not something I agree with necessarily, that he comes away from it with.
Children are really malleable.
Yeah.
Like, very, like, so malleable that you can start doing something and then change it within like 5 to 10 years. They're malleable enough to do basically anything with, which is the terrifying thing with children.
Yeah,
But
I'm always trying to remember that. Jordan Peterson mentioned that to children, the adults are literally basically as dangerous as a loaded gun. You gotta
no,
just
and
really watch what you do, and
because if you decide that like a certain behavior is too wrong or too messed up and they deliver that behavior too many times, they're not going to know what to do with it. Like, because human behavior is invariable, as much as we try to hold on to what we can as a concept of what human behavior is, you can't always predict exactly what it'll end up being.
oh, definitely.
But we can hope,
Yeah.
especially within this context of what we're talking about, that it'll
Right.
be forward towards survival.
Survival and hopefully thriving.
And hopefully thriving, yeah.
I would just be scared to have.
Why am I
my
so
kid.
much colder than I am recently? Holy shit.
Cold.
I just got like really cold all of a sudden, like super cold.
It's a ghost, dude.
I mean, like, I believe in ghosts as much as like visions, like as I don't know. If ghosts exist, it's fucking things from the fourth dimension that we're not capable of perceiving. But whatever. If anybody wants to question me about that, that's fine. But if not, let's keep talking about what we were talking about.
Oh, I was gonna say, it would be scary for me to raise a kid, and
raising a kid is terrifying.
Well, having
me.
them go to school and then teaching, all this racial divisive stuff that they're
Well, no.
implementing
Do you know when I learned about racial shit? It was when I was in 8th grade. I learned about racial shit in 8th grade because I got in a fight with a black kid, and my dad told me that I probably got in a fight with him in this specific instance because I was as good at him in athletics or better than him.
How old are you?
Currently? Like today?
Yes.
I will be 24 in about 3 weeks.
So when you were going to school, were they teaching, we're all the same, or is it?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. We're 100% the same people. Everybody has the same, like,
Yep.
as far as everything goes, ability. If you've got special like athletic ability, that's just your genes.
Yeah, and just basically, we learned about history, of course, but the fact of who we are as individuals.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm going along with. Yeah.
Oh, see, what I'm scared about now is like if they're teaching this stuff where they're saying, you're privileged or you're, underprivileged because of what color you are.
No. I have been told before that and this is socially, not educationally. I have been told that I should act the same towards black kids as I should white kids.
That's not the same anymore. That's not what they're teaching in schools anymore now. I mean, you
I
look
know
at
that's
that white
I know
thing.
I know what you're saying, but like I was told that at one point, and I was super confused, like, as to what's the difference.
Oh, like why are they even pointing it out?
Yeah, like that's where I was confused. Is like,
Oh, yeah.
why is there a pointing out into what we're talking about? Like, and I didn't get it until I was older.
Well, some people might come from families where they have like racist parents or something, and maybe they needed like school to be like, "Hey, don't treat people
My
different."
grandparents were racist. I'm not gonna lie. My
think all of
parents
ours
weren't,
were.
but my grandparents were definitely racist.
Yeah, I definitely had a great grandmother that would say the N word way too often.
There's certain things you're just like, as a person, you're just like, yeah, after a certain point, yeah, I love you, grandma, but no.
I think there's something that's helpful about having interacted with the generations where that had been accepted at one point. You can look at that and you get the
Oh, for
sensation
sure.
of, oh yeah, we've come a long way. Let's keep it going.
Yeah,
This is great.
yeah,
But we don't have
that's
that
not
anymore.
okay. We're not gonna say that anymore. That's insane.
Yeah, well, you just learn there's like certain subjects you don't bring up around grandma,
Well, check this out.
Right.
So, like, my grandparents, they save greyhounds, the racing dogs.
Hmm.
They save them, and they're like, "Oh, we love these dogs," and they're the best, and we know they get treated the worst, and we go out of our way to save them because they get treated the worst. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then my sister goes to try to date this Mexican guy.
Oh man.
And it's not like they hated him. They didn't try and push for against him or anything like that.
It was just alarming though for them.
Yeah, and they weren't
Maybe.
for it. They weren't against it either. They weren't like get rid of him or anything like that. They weren't like push him away.
There was a
But there
sense
was a
there
definite like,
tension.
oh, he's yeah.
And it's really, like I said, it's really good that we have those anecdotes, that we can even share and say, you know, times have changed. Unfortunately, people think
Well,
they still need to change further.
do you think that part of the reason might be that this later generation might not have those super racist grandparents anymore, that they died off, and that now they don't have something to compare, real racism to?
I think
I think that might take another generation or two.
Well, no, I mean, look at they're trying to cancel so many. I hate to use the word cancel, really, but they are trying to remove so many, stories, even but any kind of
like fire.
You mean how they're like trying to tear down
they're
statues?
trying to yeah, I guess the statues, but books in particular, they're trying to eradicate any looking back, any evidence of what might have actually happened in the past, where we can look back and say,
like they're trying to erase history.
Well, I believe in a really weird. I don't know if it's hard to say that it's alternate history. I don't know. Maybe you can laugh at me and make fun of me for what I think about what it is, and then I'll understand what it is that I think, because it would make more sense. But I think that there was a release of water or a mud flow that happened across the entire set of continents that changed where certain buildings are and what the level of things are at. I know it's really silly, but I think that basically there was at one point a flood basically of mud that
Are you talking
happened.
about 12,000 years ago across
Yes.
North and South America? Yes, Graham Hancock's work.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
and I think it's
beautiful.
I think it's
Yes,
beautiful.
Randall Carlson.
And it just makes a lot of sense.
It really
At least
does.
to me. At least to me, it makes a lot of fucking sense.
So, are you talking about the part of the civilization that may or may not have been in existence prior to the flood and erasing?
Sure. They may have existed.
Oh, okay.
Sure,
That's not what you're referring to, though.
yeah, no, they may have existed for like they could have. Like I can't. There's nothing I can do to deny that.
Well, I mean, you
But
got to think at the end of the Ice Age, like any civilization that was
well, the version of that civilization would be Atlanteans.
well, I mean, any civilization that was on the coast is underwater now.
Any civilization advanced enough to survive it was considered an advanced civilization, and that would be quote unquote based on history Atlanteans. That part of history is a really big pain in the ass because we have to consider the fact that there was actual, like, the 7 cities or the 7 energies of the cities that existed. There's a lot going on in that, actually.
You know, I wonder if the burning of the books in Alexandria in ancient Greece, if that hadn't happened, if we would have had more keys to
That would have
unlock
made
that mystery.
You know what? One of the things you know, it's really sad. Like I want to share this just because I want to express how I feel about the world. Just there's
Dear
certain
diary.
times where yeah, no, exactly. Dear diary, this is exactly how I feel.
Awesome.
Today was a good day.
No, for real. Sometimes I literally feel like if I could give up everything that I've ever experienced, ever, to be the spirit of vengeance for things that are truly unfair, I would. Like
Ghost Rider?
Like, yeah. If somebody gave me the ability, like if somebody was straight, like you can give up everything that you are to make things truly fair, I would. I'd give it up in an instant if that was the reality of what it was.
I don't know if that's something we would want though.
No,
like, truly fair. I don't know. Like, is that like everybody
truly
has the
fair
exact
in
same
my
thing?
metric, not your metric. Truly fair in what my metric of what truly fair is, not yours.
So what is truly fair to you?
What is truly fair? Skill, specifically when it comes to competing with each other in physical sports.
So to help people that
People that are monstrously
people
that are monstrously physical in physical sports would do fantastic. Like, there's no way about it. If you're stronger, you're stronger. If you're faster, you're faster. If you're more endurant, you're more endurant. If you're like, there's no crossover.
But if everybody had those attributes, then wouldn't competitive sports not exist? Because everybody would be playing.
Well,
at the
no,
exact
because
same level.
competitive sports has gone the same layer as it does today. It would be another layer of what people are capable of and what people aren't capable of. So your version of it would be what people are capable of or aren't capable of, and the other version would be the opposite. It's pretty complicated, isn't it?
So you want to heighten the abilities for all of us as a whole?
As a whole.
And see what would happen?
Well,
And you
well,
would
the
give
thing
your
is
life
like I'm
to see
okay.
that happen?
Well, I would give so I would give my life personally. Like to be honest, like I don't know what my life is worth, right? Personally. So
You're young.
I would say I would give my life to have the world be fair.
I think that's
Now,
what speaking up for people is about, and taking
now
chances and
what I mean by fair when I say that is that, especially in a game system, I'm not going to do something that's going to be incomparable. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to use my power to do something that's incomparable to other people, like something that no one is capable of countering or is incapable of doing something about. Just because I have the opportunity to do it.
So you're basically like God in this scenario?
If that's what you take from that, I guess so. I'm not
Well,
trying to be
if
that.
that's
I'm
what
not
you
trying to
mean.
be that, but if that's what it is, yeah. That's not what my goal is in this, to be that.
I just think
Well, I
that,
think
thinking that your moral, what you think is just might not be what everybody.
No, you're right. And I'm not, but my difference is that I don't import to everybody that what I think is just is just.
But you want the
I
benefit to be beneficial to the people that you'd be sacrificing for at the same time, though.
Yeah, like, so I don't go out of my, like, I'm not choosing that those people are correct, but if people do follow that, then I can do what I can. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I'm right or I'm wrong. I'm saying that I will help and I can do what I can for this.
And I think what you're expressing is a really deep human, I mean, that's reciprocity in a sort of way, not like not in a greedy sort of way, but that I guess that's half of reciprocity, just, giving up something for yourself on a micro level to help somebody else in need that you see in front of you, or to help your community do better. It sounds
I'd
like that's what
rather
you're expressing.
someone I'd rather someone do better than me because I know someone can.
Yeah, and that would be a great reason to do that. You wouldn't just do it for somebody who wouldn't care if you sacrificed. That would be a terrible cost to you and probably to them in the end too. So yeah, I mean, I kind of follow what you're saying. You're just kind of raising it to a higher metaphysical level,
Yeah, it's a
metaphorical.
little out of the way of what it is, but yeah.
But I think it stems from deep feelings of something that we all come across, and that you, in a way, do have the ability to do that really would have an impact on the world in one way or another. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's really awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It's definitely a cool thought experiment.
Yes. All right, guys, I got a jet, but it was really fun. I look forward to doing this again soon.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna
very
head
soon,
out
yeah.
as well. See
All
ya.
right, thanks, Travis, for hosting this. Bye.
Nope, was the greatest.
Bye.
I'll probably be here just because I literally have nothing else to do. Well, actually, that's not true. I gotta go to bed soon, but still. Don't know how this didn't start charging, but whatever. Trav, seriously, it's just me and you. We gotta do something here. Trav. It's bad. I don't know.